This, my friends, is Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I did this with Phases 1, 2, and 4. I'm finally doing it with Phase 3, and that is a ranking of Phase 3. Now the reason this took so long to do is because there's one review I had not done yet, and that was my Far From Home review rant. That was not an issue of me forgetting, that was intentional. It was kind of a funny video, so I decided I was going to make it my 500 subscriber video. So go watch that. It should be one of the videos tagged at the end. I'll also tag it in the video, so there's no reason why you can't miss it, but it's a fun time, and I'm celebrating 500 subs, so if you could go give it a watch, that would be awesome. That would make my day. But now that that's done, and I have reviewed every single Phase 3 film, I can finally rank all 11 of them. I thought it was 10. It's 11. So I had to fix my list because I left out a movie. Also, I'm still recovering from illness. I'm almost done. I'm like at the back half. It's almost over. But every once in a while, I start to sound awful. And that's because of congestion and throat stuff. So if you're watching this and you're like, damn, he sounds like a demon, just know that's because I'm still sick, and I'm going to have to take a second to cough and blow my nose and then come back to keep recording. So, that if I ever start to sound weird, that's why. Anyway, without further ado, let's rank Phase 3. Alright, so this should come as no surprise to anyone because I've been very vocal about my hatred of this movie. But at number 11, we have...
Would you like to know what you really are?
Captain Marvel. This movie, in my opinion, only has one redeeming factor, and that's Talos. That's the only good thing in this movie. I think it has, like, one scene, like the first fight scene. It's fine enough, but it's just a nothing burger of a movie, and it makes me not want to see Carol Danvers on screen again. So, Carol Danvers is the most boring and uninteresting Marvel superhero. Now, the reason for this is because, one, she's not displaying any emotion, and because they decided to make the Solo movie about her having amnesia and her trying to learn who she is, and yes, it's a creative take on the origin instead of doing a classical origin, but the only issue with it is that it makes it so most of the movie, we have no clue who this character is. And we don't know who she is because she doesn't know who she is. So we're following an unexciting narrator. And she solves all of her problems. This bothers me a lot. She solves all of her problems by getting stronger. She never learned the lesson Spider-Man learned. All she does whenever she's in a pickle is she gets an upgrade. She just goes into the skill tree, assigns a skill point, and she's stronger. She's got these friggin' Pringle cans on her hands. Oh, that's okay. She'll just get stronger. She's falling to Earth at terminal velocity. That's okay. She just knows how to fly now. How? I don't know. I guess she just unlocked it. Oh, what's this? There's a missile strike and a nuke coming towards Earth. That's okay. She'll just get stronger. What's this? She's being overwhelmed by enemies because of her little restraining bolt. That's okay. She'll just get stronger. It's how she solves every problem, and it is lesson 101 at how to fail at writing not just superheroes, but characters in general. They also made Nick Fury into a huge joke by having a cat scratch out his eye. And the first half of this movie, it's fine enough, but once the twist happens and you realize Talos is actually a good guy and Jan Rog is a villain, this movie starts to fall apart as Carol fights these people that she could basically consider family with no remorse or feelings or emotion of any kind as she just brutally whoops all of their asses. And what a waste of Jude Law. He's a great actor, and they wasted him. It's gonna sound mean, but my favorite part of this movie is the ending. I originally had number 10 and number 9 switched. I switched them a couple minutes ago because I realized, having now posted my rant on this movie, I cannot bring myself to put it higher.
You're right, you may not be ready, but this is my responsibility. Saving the world requires sacrifice. Sometimes people die.
Spider-Man: Far From Home. Is this movie fun when you're watching it? Sure. Are the effects cool? Sure. Are the performances good? Sure. But this movie's story is dog ass. And it undoes everything that Spider-Man has gone through as a hero up to this point. Because this is not a Spider-Man movie, it's an Iron Man movie. Mysterio's motives, goals, wants, needs, desires, his fight lies with Iron Man. Sony wanted to make an Iron Man movie, they couldn't, so they had to do it with Spider-Man. Jake Gyllenhaal fills Mysterio with so much charisma and so much ambition that he's amazing to watch on screen, but after the twist when Mysterio goes on his 4-minute yawning exposition about his plan and how he got to this point to a group of people that already knows how he got to this point, he gets a lot less exciting. He gets a lot more one note. None of the side characters in this movie have any personality. MJ is boring, Betty's boring, Flash is boring. They introduce Brad Davis, who's in, like, I think one Spider-Man comic, who is insanely insufferable, and they could have just given his part to Flash and it would have worked better. For some reason, Aunt May wants to bang Tony Stark's security guard. Ned, who is the best character in Homecoming, gets sidelined because they didn't know what to do with him in this movie, which is actually an issue they had in No Way Home also. They didn't really know what to do with Ned after they made him the guy in the chair. And then there's also just things in the movie that make no sense. Like, why would Tony Stark give insanely powerful glasses that can kill people to a 15-year-old who has been dead for 5 years and has previously shown to Tony Stark that he's irresponsible? And Spider-Man's arc in this movie doesn't exist because they lay the groundwork for a phenomenal arc about him becoming, or people wanting him to become the next Iron Man and him not thinking he can do that, him not being able to live up to that. At which point, Happy has to give him this talk about how it's okay to be his own guy. He doesn't have to be Iron Man. There never will be an Iron Man. All he needs to be is Spider-Man, which is the same arc he had in Homecoming, but who gives a shit, honestly? And then right after this amazing scene, Tony Stark is gifted an Iron Man lab where he can make a multi-million-dollar suit on a Stark Industries jet while AC/DC plays in the background, and then he gets airdropped into London. And that undoes his entire arc. The only reason this movie's not at the bottom of the barrel is because the Spidey sense shit is cool. But other than that, I don't like this movie, so it's at number 10. Number 9 was originally my number 10.
We're gonna die. I don't wanna die. We didn't die!
It's Ant-Man and the Wasp. This and Spider-Man switched places, which is something I didn't think would ever happen, but here we are. Now it's funny because this is a significant downgrade from its predecessor, and the sequel to this movie looks to be a significant upgrade, leaving this as the weird middle child that we all know exists, but we don't really like to talk about. I'll talk about my negatives first, as I've been doing up to this point. They made this man right here, this amazing character who we saw in the first Ant-Man movie, who was one of the highlights of Civil War, they made him into a joke. Scott Lang is smart. We've seen that in all of his other appearances, but for some reason, in this film, he's a bumbling idiot walking around the movie, not knowing what's going on, not knowing what he's doing, annoying everyone around him, and his suit is broken for the entire movie, so he doesn't even get to do that much cool shrinking and growing shit. You have Wasp, who granted has a full arc and really does feel like the main character of the film, but she's such an incredibly wooden character. You've got 3 insanely forgettable villains. Ghost is fine. I mean, Hannah John Kamen does a good job as Ghost, but there's not a person alive who's begging to see Ghost again. Goliath, what a waste of Lawrence Fishburne. Goliath in the comics is a character who can grow to be He said in the movie he got up to 21 feet. There was potential for a Goliath and Ant-Man giant kaiju fight in San Francisco, which is totally where I thought the movie was going. And they didn't do it. Lawrence Fishburne just leaves the movie at some point. And then you have Walton Goggins, who's in here just to be another complication. The shrinking and growing is fun, but it kind of sucks that they showed all of it in the trailer. There's no reason they needed to put Giant Man in the marketing of this movie. But it's the performances that really sell this one as more than dog crap. Paul Rudd kills it as Ant-Man in this movie. He's definitely the best part. Michael Douglas will never do a bad performance, and he's killing it as Hank Pym. And Abby Ryder Fortson as Cassie Lang is so slept on. She's so good in this movie for the few scenes she's in, and her chemistry with Paul Rudd is off the charts that it's gonna take a while for me to see Kathryn Newton as Cassie. And, of course, the third act chase scene, that's a blast. So those few little bright spots in this movie are what make it better than Far From Home. But it still definitely belongs in the bottom part of this list. I'm going to apologize for this because a lot of people are going to hate me for this opinion, but at number 8.
We will. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
It's Avengers Endgame. My issues with Avengers Endgame are that it has some amazing positives. It has some amazing high highs, but it is also so full of bullshit that it gets worse every single time I watch it. So to actually start with the positives this time, before I get into complaining about how this is kind of a disappointing movie and the worst Russo brothers Marvel movie, let me say, Portals, it can't be topped, ever. I don't think I will ever get anything like that again, and if I do, it won't be for some time. That was truly special, being at Endgame opening night, getting to see that with all the Marvel fans, bunch of people in costume, packed theater, literally not a single free seat in the theater. It will never be topped, and on rewatches, that scene is just as good. Everything before the 5-year time jump is the tone this movie should have stayed the entire time, and seeing the Survivor's Guilt meetings that Cap is at, and seeing Black Widow leading the Avengers, and showing the PTSD everyone has, and how Tony doesn't want to be in this fight anymore, and Ant-Man coming back to the world, that's all great. But then the second act of this movie happens, and Hulk becomes Hulk off screen, and Thor has no character arc because he never felt any guilt for killing Thanos, so there's no reason why he should be saying they killed him incorrectly the first time. There's no arc there. You have characters who start off great in this movie, like Nebula and Rocket and Hawkeye, starting off with these amazing arcs, and then they kind of get sidelined in favor of bigger characters, although Rocket is amazing in this movie. He's one of my favorite parts of this movie. Unless you're Black Widow, Iron Man, or Steve Rogers, you're really not as important to this movie as the movie wants you to think you are, and the time heist, while it's a fun retrospective through the MCU, it falls apart completely because at no point do you ever feel the characters are in danger. Which means that for an entire hour of this movie, there's basically no stakes. You know they're going to get the Infinity Stones, and even when they lose one of the Infinity Stones, you know they're still going to find a way to get the Infinity Stone. The emotion is there, the action is there, but when you really start to pick this movie apart, it just does not hold up as well as it did on that amazing day in 2019.
I'm not a queen or a monster. I'm the goddess of death. What were you the god of again?
At number 7, we have Thor Ragnarok. This is, well, it's not really in the middle, is it? It's technically in the bottom half, but it's basically in the middle tier of Phase 3 movies. I adore Thor Ragnarok. It's one of the most rewatchable Marvel movies. It's one of the most fun Marvel movies to watch, but it's not without its issues, which I'll just lay out first. Tonally, it makes no sense because you have on Asgard. Death, destruction, the whole place is on fire. Hela's killing entire armies. She's trying to execute civilians, and there's one guy on Asgard trying to save them all, but it feels like victory is impossible. Defeat is inevitable. It's over for Asgard, and then it cuts to Thor and Hulk arguing over who's a bad friend, and we get to see Hulk's ass, and we have quite funny jokes, but weird in comparison to the Asgard scenes. And it works well enough in this movie, but Taika Waititi went off the rails in Love and Thunder, but I've already talked about that enough. I don't need to go into it again. The shining spot of this movie is its character work. Every single character has an arc in this movie, and they are all set up and paid off so beautifully. Obviously, Thor, with his whole power level thing of Mjolnir breaks, and Thor is like, well, shit, I'm screwed. Asgard's screwed, and he has to learn that it's not the hammer that makes him, it's the man that makes him, and he gets to unleash his full power that the next movie completely undid, but whatever. You have him losing the eye to become like Odin in this great parallel, in this great piece of symbolism as the movie ends. Valkyrie learning to get back in the fight. Banner having to come to terms with Hulk, which the next movie also completely undid, but that's an amazing arc there. And, of course, Loki's redemption arc in this movie is one of the most beautiful stories in the MCU, and I kind of wish they kept him dead because of how his story ends in this, but it is what it is. Even though, because, the Loki we have now is a different Loki, so it doesn't ruin this character arc. It just, sort of sours it, because we know there's still a Loki out there who's going to end up seeing Thor again. But just, every time I watch this movie, I try to pay attention to Loki's character, and it gets better and better every single time. Your villains are incredible in this. Surtur is awesome. Yes, he's a big dumb CGI monster. That's his purpose, but Clancy Brown is amazing as Surtur. Jeff Goldblum gets to be the most Jeff Goldblum that Jeff Goldblum has ever gotten to be. And Hela, I think, is an amazing villain. Played by the beautiful Cate Blanchett. When she first comes through that portal, ooh, I would have knelt immediately. The worst part of this movie, in my opinion, is Scourge, though, because Scourge, the movie thinks it's more brilliant than it is with his redemption arc, but he doesn't have a redemption arc because he was never a bad guy. He literally regrets doing bad things. He doesn't execute anyone, so his sacrifice is kind of meaningless because he was never evil. They could have done more with Karl Urban, but other than that, Thor Ragnarok is an amazing film. Alright, at number 6, so we're at the halfway point here, I've
spent so many years peering through time, looking for you.
Doctor Strange. This is the movie, in all the Marvel movies, probably the one that's fluctuated where it sits on my list the most. But Doctor Strange is such a fun ride, and I'm still pissed I didn't see this movie in 3D. I didn't see the sequel in 3D either. I kind of wish I did. Benedict Cabbage Patch gives a great performance as Stephen Strange in this movie. It skyrocketed Doctor Strange to being one of my favorite Marvel heroes in his first appearance, and he has a great character arc, pretty similar to Tony Stark, but different, kind of. It's weird. I can't really explain it. It just is. You have the best side character in the MCU, Wong. Welcome to the Wong CU. He's amazing in this. Mordo, I think Mordo's tragic hero arc is actually very well done and quite beautiful. And Tilda Swinton's Ancient One is my favorite part of this movie, and her death scene with Strange. Oh my god, I could watch that every single day. It's like a writing masterclass for me.
I'm not ready.
No one ever is. We don't get to choose our time. Death is what gives life meaning. To know your days are numbered. Your time is short.
The negative with this movie, there's two negatives. First off, what a waste of Mads Mikkelsen. You have one of the greatest actors in the world today, and you made him a one-note, pretty bland villain. He has so much depth in the prelude comic to this movie that I don't even want to tell you if you have not... Hold on. Doctor Strange Prelude. Read it. They go into Caecilius in that comic. They give him so much depth. And without that comic, he's not exciting. And also, it's a lot like Iron Man. It's like a lot like Iron Man. It was the last Marvel movie that really kind of copied the Iron Man origin thing. And ever since then, they've stopped doing it because they realized people don't want to see it anymore. It does it probably the best since Iron Man, but it is still kind of upsetting that it's like, oh, here we are again. But the coolest parts about this movie, of course, the magic system and the effects are great. And then the way Doctor Strange beats the villain, not by fighting him, but by just annoying him until he leaves. That's amazing.
So don't mess with me. Because I will kill you and everybody you love.
Bringing us into the top 5, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. And before I even get into that, let me just tell you, we have that, right? If we flip it around, everything's upside down. So you have to flip it over, and now Spider-Man's sitting upside down. I love it. This is one of my favorite MCU Blu-ray covers purely because of that. Now, I've previously described Spider-Man Homecoming as my depression movie, and I can safely say it still is. Whenever I'm feeling down, whenever things just aren't going great, on the bad days, on the days where it's raining in here, maybe even raining out there, I put in Spider-Man Homecoming, and I just get so happy. This movie's just so wholesome, and it's just so fun and entertaining, and it's a great Spider-Man adventure. Spider-Man's arc in this movie is great. I hate the Far From Home replicated it, but it's great. Of him wanting to be an Avenger and be Iron Man so badly. And that lesson at the end of it is, you don't need to be Iron Man. Look out for the little guy. Be Spider-Man. It's the lesson he learns from both Iron Man and Vulture. And that scene, when he lifts the rubble off himself, is still the best Spider-Man moment in the MCU. And it defines that character to a T.
Come on, Spider-Man. Come on, Spider-Man.
It is beautiful. It's a beautiful story Spider-Man has. Ned, best character. Vulture, one of the top tier MCU villains. John Watts is great with his villains. He truly is. He did great with Vulture. I have issues with Mysterio and Green Goblin, of course. John Watts and the writing team on this movie know how to handle their Spider-Man villains, that's for sure. And I feel like the people who complain that this is an Iron Man movie or that he's too reliant on the technology are missing the main message of the movie. Watch it again. They intentionally made his suit like Iron Man. Bringing us into the top 4 here.
Burn it all! What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world.
Black Panther, and also, is this not like the coolest steelbook? Like, look at that. It's so awesome. But yes, Black Panther. What a beautiful movie, and I realized on the rewatch, I like this even more than I thought I did. It's just so incredibly good. The themes in it, the messages in it, the symbolism and everything behind this movie. This truly is a piece of art. Do I think it deserved a Best Picture nomination? Hell no. It was not one of the best movies of that year. But it at least got some award recognition, which I think it deserved. Not any VFX ones, though, because the VFX in this movie is kind of trash. Because they had to all work on Thanos, so they don't really have time to do this movie. Every character in this movie is great. Shuri is one of my favorite Marvel characters. Wakanda Forever made her even better, but coming out of this movie, she was one of my favorites. Okoye, Nakia, they all have so much depth and complexity to them, and they're all so well acted. This movie has some of the best performances of the entire MCU, and literally everyone, W'Kabi, M'Baku, Queen Ramonda, everyone, even T'Chaka, for like the 2 scenes he's in, and he's dead. He has depth and complexity, and there's so much to that character, but the 2 standouts of this movie are, of course, Michael B. Jordan and Chadwick Boseman. Rest in peace. Chadwick Boseman, star power. That was a true movie star. There's no one else who could beat T'Challa. And Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger, I personally think he should have got more reward recognition. He was one of my favorite performances of the year this movie came out. What he did in that movie, just watch it again and really pay attention to Michael B. Jordan. It's phenomenal. He's going to have an Oscar sitting on his mantle in a few years. It's coming. I know it. And is the story of this movie The Lion King? Yes, but The Lion King is the single greatest film ever made, so they can't really make it bad. And the action when it's not the final battle, it's good. I still love that Korea chase. It's still the best Black Panther fight scene there's been between both movies and the Avengers movies and Civil War. This is the best Black Panther action scene, is the Korea chase. Top 3, speaking of Civil War.
Stay down. Final warning.
I could do this all day.
Captain America Civil War. I watched this before Wakanda Forever and I realized just how incredible this movie is. The way the movie so perfectly telegraphs the conflict in the Avengers and the way it sets it up and builds to that airport battle and then that final third act, it doesn't feel forced. It feels so naturally worked in. And yeah, at the end of the day, was Captain America right? Maybe. But if you didn't flip sides at least once watching this movie, then that's on you. That's just you being ignorant. That's not on the creators of this movie. Because one scene you'll be on Iron Man's side, next scene you'll be on Cap's side, and then Tony will say something that'll make you doubt Cap's side, but then Cap says something that pulls you back over to him. The movie keeps you in a constant limbo as an audience, not really knowing which side is the right side here. And despite featuring basically every Avenger except Thor and Hulk, and bringing in new characters like Black Panther and Spider-Man, and reintroducing characters who aren't even Avengers like Bucky and Ant-Man, and the way that it brings it all together but still makes it quintessentially a Captain America story, like, take lessons, people. That's how you do it. And of course I gotta talk about Zemo, because for some reason people don't like Zemo when he's one of the best Marvel villains. He broke the Avengers for very understandable reasons, and he didn't even lift a finger. He made them try to kill themselves, and that third act conflict. The airport battle is fun. The airport battle is so fun. I love watching it. But that third act fight between Iron Man and Cap and Bucky is the most emotional thing in this entire franchise. With Civil War out of the way, that brings us into the top 2. And at number 2...
All you do is yell at each other. You're not friends.
No, we're family. Except maybe her.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is the second best Phase 3 film. A lot of people think this movie is not good or disappointing or a major downgrade. See, I respectfully disagree. I think it's better than the first one, but that's a video for a completely different time. We're not doing that in this video. The character writing in this movie is still to this day the best character writing James Gunn has done. It's great in everything else he's done. Guardians, Peacemaker, The Suicide Squad, it's great. But it just does not top the characters in Guardians as he wrote them. Star-Lord's conflict and his struggle with his father and this idea of family. That's honestly the heart of this whole movie, is just finding your family. And, you know, Drax obviously still mourning the loss of his in that incredible scene where Mantis touches him and you know immediately what Drax is feeling. And Gamora and her rivalry with her sister. And then Yondu was sold into slavery by his parents. And then you have Rocket, whose story in this movie is incredible.
He didn't chase him away, even though he yelled at him. I was always mean. And he stole batteries he didn't need.
Well, of course not.
And in fact, if we're getting his backstory in Volume 3, I could probably argue why Guardians is a Rocket Raccoon trilogy instead of what you would think, which is a Star-Lord trilogy. This movie has some of my favorite scenes in all of Marvel. I think the prison break that Yondu, Rocket, and Groot do is amazing. The final battle is awesome. And Yondu's funeral, I cannot get through it without shedding a tear. It is that good, and the way it ties everything up and pays everything off, and everything the movie did up to that point. The movie telegraphs its ending so well. It is insane how well this movie's plot moves along all the way up through its ending. One of the big complaints of this movie is that there isn't really a villain for most of it, which is so not true. Because literally, after they go to Ego's planet, and James Gunn knows there's not going to be a villain on Ego's planet for a while, because they have to build up the relationship between Peter and his father, that's when they deal with Taserface and the Ravagers. There is an antagonist, there is a villain, and there is conflict for most of this movie. And then, what happens after they deal with that? They come back for the Ego villain reveal. So, yeah, there's bad guys in this movie. If you have not watched this movie in a while, if you're one of the people who really does not like this movie, I urge you to rewatch it and just really hone in on the messages of this movie and the characters in this movie. And I assure you, you will like it just as much, if not more, than the first one.
No, I have to go.
Fun isn't something one considers when balancing the universe.
But there can only be one number one at number one, and that one number at number one is Avengers Infinity War. If you know what video I was referencing just then, please tell me. But yes, Avengers Infinity War is number one on this list. Because I still don't understand how they managed to make Infinity War. How they managed to take 23 superheroes, and that's not even including the side characters that you see in the movie, like whoever's not on the cover of this. Everyone on the cover of this isn't even scratching the surface of the amount of characters in this movie. And then you have a big bad who has half the screen time of the movie going on a giant fetch quest for 6 stones, and you have to somehow have all these characters have arcs. It should not work, and it mostly does, because the only character who sucks in this movie is Hulk. One, they completely ruin Ragnarok. Like, honestly, you don't even have to watch Ragnarok because they undo both what Thor and Hulk go through in that movie. But then they don't even give Hulk an arc to replace it. They do it off screen and then just have him be back in Endgame to not have an arc again. But other than that, when you look at your characters like Iron Man and Doctor Strange and Thor and Gamora and Spider-Man and Black Panther and Captain America and all those other characters and the fight they go on in this movie, both internal and external, against a guy who is strong enough to destroy half the universe and who they literally cannot beat in a fight. Oh, it's so beautiful. And the fact that they chose to focus on Thanos as the protagonist of the movie with Thor as his main antagonist to sort of water down how many superheroes there are in this, that was the right call. I kind of hope they do that with the next 2 Avengers movies. Make Kang the protagonist. That might be the way to go. And this ending, like, you could have ended the MCU right there with Thanos sitting on the porch, and it would have been a shocking end. But it would have also been a satisfying one in a way. The heroes lose, Thanos wins. Ain't that some shit? Also, never thought we'd see it. And the death in this movie, they all hit so hard. Yeah, basically every single one of them has been undone since then, because Loki's back, Gamora's back, and Vision's back. But in this movie, God, when you first watch him in this movie, they hit you like a freight train. I mean, Loki dying to save his brother in the opening minutes of the movie, Gamora trying to kill herself before Thanos chucks her off a cliff because he cares more about his quest than his daughter, and Scarlet Witch having to blow a hole in the head of the man he loves, while the rest of the Avengers hold Thanos off because they know they can't beat him, but maybe they can slow him down. The deaths in this movie, I wish they hadn't been undone because they work so well. But there you guys go. That is all 11 films in Phase 3 of the MCU ranked. What do you think of my list? Which ones pissed you off the most, and why is it Avengers Endgame? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.